Hi, welcome to the Night Queen's Lair. I'm Yasmine Galenorn, your hostess here, and I am a New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and USA Today best-selling author, and I'm here to talk about my books and my writing process and some hobbies and other things that my readers like to hear. If you don't know who I am, you can look me up on my website to find out my work if you're interested. Galenorn.com, that's Galenorn.com. But okay, I'm going to dive right in today, and I think I've been asked a lot about my writing process and how I came to be a writer, so today I'm going to talk a bit about that, and I may next time go into the process itself of writing, if people are interested. So as I've mentioned in a few other videos, I wanted to be a writer from the time I was 3 years old. I was learning to read when I was 3. Couldn't write yet, but I was learning to read. And one day it dawned on me that people made the books that I was really in love with. And right then I knew I wanted to make books. And that was it. That was what set me on the path, and it stayed with me. So all through grade school, I used to write short stories and poetry, and I think I tried writing a couple plays way back then, because I've always loved the theater as well. And then when I got to be about 11 or 12, I got serious with my writing. I had a very dysfunctional family and somewhat of an abusive childhood. And writing kept me sane. I used to write poetry, and I wrote short stories, and I started submitting early. I studied the business of writing even as a early teenager. And back then there was no internet, and there wasn't you didn't write on a computer, you wrote on a typewriter. And so I taught myself to type, and I would submit stories, and it would take months sometimes to get them back. And, I'd wait and wait. And every time I got a rejection letter, I would take it as a badge of honor because it meant I was trying. I skipped high school and started college when I was 15. And that is the year that I got my first poem published. College Journal, I don't remember what it was called, but they published one of my poems, and I remember being ecstatic. It was like, finally, I got accepted. So from there on, I kept submitting short stories and kept writing them, and when I went to get the rest of my degree, because I got my Associates of Arts when I was 17, and then I hitchhiked to California to live with my sister for a while and take care of her kids, one of which is, my nieces are closer in age to me than my sisters were, and one of my nieces is living near me today, and she's very much almost like the daughter I've never had. Anyway, so I took care of the kids down there, and after a few months I realized I wasn't cut out to take care of kids of any sort, and I came back to Washington, and I went back to college, and I went to a couple of different colleges for a quarter here, a quarter there, and finally I landed at Evergreen State College in Olympia, and it fit what I needed, and so I got the rest of my degree there. It took some time. I had a few blips along the way, and a lot of them were money blips, trying to come up with the money for college. But eventually I got my bachelor's degree in theatrical management, of all things. But I figured I knew I was going to be a writer, so I might as well have fun, so I took a lot of theater classes, and I think that helped my writing, especially since I was focused on directing, because it taught me how to direct an entire group of people. And that's not that different than directing characters, than, organizing characters. And after that, I ended up in my first marriage, which was a spectacular disaster, very abusive. I left when I got beat up. Hello, Mr. Apple. Did you come up here to hear a story? Yes. Okay. But during those years that I was with him, I did get my first short story published. And I was still submitting stories all the time, and by then I was starting to write books. I held myself back, partially because my ex used to tell me, if you succeed as a writer, I will have to leave you. And honestly, I was so fucked up that I bought into that. And I tried to quit writing and was so unhappy. And then finally, after the, getting black and blue a bit on my arm, I just said, that's it, and left. And it was like, I'll never compromise myself or my writing for anybody else. So from there, I spent a couple years on my own, and I wrote, and I worked. I was working for the state at that time. And finally, I got really tired of working for the state, and I needed a change. It's like after 9 years with my ex, I needed to do something drastically different. So I quit my job, and I bought a converted school bus, and I moved into it, and that was an adventure. I'll tell you, that was a real adventure. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote. And then about a year and a half after, about 2 years after I left my ex, I met Sam. Sam was my current husband. And it was a whirlwind romance. So if you see whirlwind romances in my books, it comes from real life, because the very first night we expressed interest in each other, I moved into his room with him, because I was living with his roommate at that point. And 2 months later, he proposed, and 5 months after that, we got married, and we've been together over 20-some years. So, yeah, if my characters get together kind of quickly, it's because I've had experience in that department. So, while I was with Sam, he was very supportive. He's very, very supportive of my writing. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote books, and I collected a number of books in the closet. Then in 1993, I almost choked to death. I had pneumonia, and Sam was at work, and I was trying to find something to eat for dinner, but I was so weak I couldn't do much. So I made the mistake. I popped some air-popped popcorn, and you know how when you cough, you inhale, cough. Well, I had a piece of popcorn in my throat, or in my mouth, when I started to cough, and I inhaled instinctively because of the cough, and a kernel got lodged in my windpipe. I couldn't get it dislodged. There was nobody home but me. I stood up. I remember standing there trying to cough it up, and the next thing I knew, I couldn't see anything except there was this black sort of space, and I knew that I existed. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was. All I knew was that feeling of, I exist, I exist, I exist. And the next moment, I opened my eyes, and I was on the floor. I had passed out, and when I hit the floor, it dislodged the kernel from my throat, and I was alive. And I thank the goddess for that. She had plans for me. So that night, after I finished calming down, I sat there and I took priority, reality check. It's like, if I had died tonight, what would have been the thing I regret the most, besides not being with Sam and the cats? And the first thing that popped into my head was, I don't have a book published. And then I looked at my life and I was like, I've been wasting a lot of time. Yeah, I've written several books, but I've been wasting time, not really, throwing myself into this. So right then I changed my priorities. My writing came first. And it took another 2 years, 2.5 years. But I got my first contract in 1996 for a nonfiction book for Trancing the Witch's Wheel. And it wasn't a contract for, a novel or fiction that I wanted, but I was so happy. And back then, we didn't have indie publishing. We didn't have anything but something called vanity publishing, which is very different. And it's basically a way to bilk writers who really want to be published out of thousands and thousands of dollars. There's not much of it around anymore. They've sort of shifted into finding other scams. But, yeah, I knew even then it wasn't a good direction to go, so I just kept trying to get published traditionally. So, yeah, I got my first contract in 1996 for Trancing the Witch's Wheel. It came out in 1997. And I stayed in contracts for 20 years almost. I wrote 8 nonfiction books, actually 7. One was sort of rewritten and re-released. And then I had a really bad year, 2000. We were up here. Sam was diagnosed with a serious, very life-threatening illness, which, as far as we know, he does not have, because he's still alive all this time later. But back then, we were just terrified that he was going to be gone in 2 years. And he lost his job right around that time. And my mother was dying from cancer. And then the week after she died, I got the contract for the last nonfiction book. And they wanted it in 6 weeks. Well, I can write a book in 6 weeks. I'm quick. And we needed the advance money. So I wrote the book. I put my grief on hold. She died. Yeah, she died like a week before I got that. And I just shoved everything to the side and wrote the book. And then after I got it into the publisher, I burned out. It was like I had a meltdown. I could not even look at the computer. And when I finally started wanting to go back to writing, I knew I couldn't write any more nonfiction. I was done. I just wanted to go back and write what I loved, which is telling stories, do what I love. But I didn't want to look at any of those books in the closet, and by then there were 7 or 8 of them, because I knew they weren't good enough. So I just sat down and started to play and goofed around and just started to write. And a few pages later, I showed what I had to Sam, and he thought it was great. He was laughing. He was going, write more, write more. So I wrote a chapter. And then I sent that chapter to a friend of mine who's an agent, not asking him would he take it on, because the book wasn't written, and I just trusted his opinion, and he looked over just about anything I had. And he wrote back going, something's happened to your writing. It's taken a big leap. And somehow I think my mother's death and just all that trauma loosened something inside and allowed me to get a book that I felt was worth reading out there. So he basically did me the greatest favor anybody's ever done in terms of writing. He looked over the chapter, he revised, or he redlined it, he not revised it, but pointed out all the places it needed revision, and he sent it back. And he goes, revise it, write another chapter, and send it to me. So I revised that chapter, and I wrote another 2 chapters, actually. Sent them back to him. Well, he tore them to bits too, and he sent it back. I revised those, sent it back, and he goes, okay, put it away and write the goddamn book, the rest of the goddamn book. So I put those chapters away, and I wrote the rest of the book, and I sent it to him. And I didn't expect him to do more than glance through it. He line edited it for me. And when there was a problem, he told me what the problem was, instead of just saying, problem here, problem there, change this, change that. He told me why it was problematic. And that manuscript, we were still doing hard copy back then, although we were doing a lot of email, but mostly, I was mailing things in and stuff. So he sent me the manuscript back, and it was blood red with his ink. But I read every comment, and I listened to what he said, and I revised that book 5 times. And finally, he wrote back going, it's ready. I don't represent mysteries. This is a paranormal mystery, and that's not something I represent. And he was like, let me think about it, but go ahead and show it to other agents. Well, a friend of mine said, why don't you give my agent a try, because she likes quirky stuff. Well, I did, and within a week, her agent had taken me on. And within 2 weeks after that, I had the first 3-book contract from Berkeley for the Chintz and China series. Now, Ghost of a Chance was not a cozy when I sent it to them. It was a lot grittier. It had elements of the cozy mysteries, but it had a lot more graphic violence and some sex in it. And Berkeley wanted cozies, and they asked would I be willing to change it. Well, it wasn't what you call a book of the heart. I mean, I loved writing it, but it wasn't something I was incredibly passionate about. So I was like, sure, I can change it. And that's how I got in to Berkeley. And so I did series after series with them, and then Otherworld. That was back in 2002 when they took me on. In 2005, I sold them the Otherworld series. In between there, I had that little known series called the Bath and Body series under the name India Inc. And honestly, writing the first book on that, I knew that I couldn't continue the series. It was like after those 3 books were written, that was it. Because there was nothing paranormal in it, and I did not enjoy writing it. I tried to do my best, and I think I did a good job, but I didn't enjoy it. So when it came to Otherworld, it's like that took off, and then the other series followed after that. And then, of course, in 2015, they decided they didn't want any more Otherworld books, and they wanted to go the route of writing or publishing thrillers and women's fiction, which that is a catch-all term for fiction by women, about women, for women. And there's some really good women's fiction out there that I read, but I don't write women's fiction. And they didn't want anything that I wanted to write. And that's when I decided, okay, well, I don't want to try another publisher right now. I did make a few forays out there, but I wasn't pleased with what was going on. And I left my agent at that point. There were some issues, but I left my agent and went indie, and here I am today. So that's how I got where I'm at right now. And this video is already almost 20 minutes long, so I think I'm going to talk about my process of writing next time. If you're interested, also let me know in the comments, are you interested in hearing about any of my hobbies. I mean, as I've said before in some posts, and you'll notice on my Instagram posts, I get into planning, print planners. I've got so many planners, it's not funny, but they help keep me organized. And I love washi tape, and I love printables, and I love stickers, and I love all those lovely things that you can play with. I also am a makeup aficionado, especially now that it has to be gluten-free and nut-free. So I can always do a video on that for some of my readers if they're interested. There's always my books, which I like to talk about. I also have histamine intolerance and food allergies, and that's a huge part of my life. It impacts what I can do and where I can go. I haven't been in a restaurant in over 3 years now because of it, because if I even smell garlic, it can cause a reaction. So there are a number of things I can talk about in these videos. So let me know some of what you'd like to hear. And I guess that's it for now. And I hope I haven't bored you if you're still around for this. And if you have some questions, leave them in the comments, and I will take a look and see what I can do next time. And some of them, as I put this on a watch party on Facebook, some of them I'll answer while I'm talking or while you're watching this. So yeah, that's it for now. Talk to you later, and probably next week.